What's up guys, it's Tom with Verus Engineering, and today we're going to be going over the installation of your UCW wing for the GR86. Alright, tools that we're going to need to install this beautiful UCW. Okay, we need a drill. Going to need, I don't know why I have two here, but you're going to want a unibit. Now you can use a regular drill bit if that's all you have, but I highly recommend you get a unibit. We'll get into those details during the install. Can also use a 1/8 inch drill bit for a pilot. I'm purposely leaving out a center punch here because the metal on the trunk is so thin you may end up deforming the trunk. So yeah, just so that's mentioned somewhere in the video and you have an idea why I didn't do that. You're gonna need a grinder with a grinding bit. I've got a carbide bit here. You can use stone if you want. 10mm socket, 10mm wrench, 4mm Allen, ratchet of some sort, a 9/16 wrench, some scissors, tape, and a cutting tool of some sort. Cut-off wheel, body saw, whatever you want, but something to cut the trunk. You're also going to need a tube of RTV. I used ultra black, which is fine, but you can just use clear if you like. This is going to be used to seal the trunk around the upright so that we don't have any water entering the trunk. All right, kit components for the GR86 UCW. Here's what you're going to get in the package. Starting first, we're going to receive some templates for the top skin and the lower or the trunk mounts. We're going to get left and right uprights. And if you look more closely, you can see that there is a beveled edge here. This beveled edge is going to want to be installed on the outside. Of course, you could put it this way as well. It's totally up to you really, but this is how we had it in mind when we machined it. We're going to have two trunk mounts, this guy and this guy, and then we're going to have two beauty plates. The beauty plates are a left and right. It may be hard to tell on video and also in person, but they are very slightly different. You can see kind of like a fatter surface here and then a very thin surface here, as well as like kind of a contour on the bottom. Put them on the trunk, and this will follow the shape of the trunk, and then you'll know which side is which. They really only go on one way once the uprights are installed onto the trunk mounts. So moving forward, we're going to have two pre-cut 3M double-sided tape pieces, and they are going to be for the beauty plates. You're going to have a hardware kit, two end plates, and of course, obviously, you're going to receive a wing. All right, once you have your template cut out, we're going to tape it to the bottom side of the trunk. We're going to start with the bottom first. Make sure the contour here lines up with the contour of the hinge, and then we're simply going to follow the directions or the notes that we get on the template, being, you know, these will be your drilled holes, and we're going to drill some holes on basically either side of this slot so that we can then take the template off and continue this, or make the slot with a cutoff wheel, and then we'll be ready to line up the top template. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll be back. All right, so what I've done here is basically follow the template. And what I've done is drilled two pilots and then stepped these two bolts out to 3/8 of an inch with our 3/8 inch drill bit, or step bit is probably the best. So if you're using a step bit, be sure you have something pretty shallow. You do not want a very long lead in before you get to your 3/8 size. Basically, if it's too long, or if you use a standard drill bit, there is a chance that it will pull the bit through and dent the backside of the trunk. So we're going to step these out to 3/8 of an inch with the appropriate bit. I've also basically created a couple pilots here. These are not 5/16 of an inch yet, but what I want to do currently is get the rivet nuts installed into these two pieces and then install the bracket. Basically, once the bracket is on here, it'll give me a better idea whether these holes are going to be in the correct spot, and basically what we're gonna have to do is create a slot here and here for the uprights to come through the trunk. And basically, due to the nature of this particular mount setup, it may be a little bit of kind of grinding away and finagling just to get everything to fit just right. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now and explain to you guys how to install the rivet nuts. Rivet nut time. So you're gonna be supplied with 6 of these rivet nuts and a rivet nut installation tool. The bolt here is going to be the bolt here should be just the right amount of threads so that it doesn't stick out, because again, it is a very shallow hole that we need to go into. So what we're going to do is insert the rivet nut portion into the hole completely. We're going to hold this portion, this nut portion, with a 9/16 wrench, and then we are going to tighten the Allen bolt until the rivet nut is completely crushed, or until you have a pretty decent amount of resistance. Also, a quick note, after you finally finalize the holes, you want to touch up the raw edges with some touch-up paint before you install the rivet nuts. All right, so we've got our 2 rivet nuts installed here. Next step is to grab your mounting plate, and we're going to temporarily install this to the car with our 12mm button head cap screws. Very important that you use the 12mm. Just as before, when you're installing the rivet nuts and drilling the holes, it's a very shallow hole, or a shallow depth before you get to the top skin of the trunk. So you don't want to dimple that or do anything of that nature. Okay, so we have both bolts installed by hand, and the next step we want to do is basically center punch the last hole using the bracket as a template. Now these 2 holes here, you might see some markings that I did prior. Basically what I did off camera is test fit, make sure I had the holes in the right spot and all that stuff. But basically, while you have this on here, it's a pretty good idea to trace with a marker of whatever your choosing is, the edge next to the mounting points or the mounting holes for the wing upright. And basically what that tells you is you will need to potentially move the slot over that amount in order to get the upright to sit in here correctly. And you guys will see more what I'm talking about after we get this hole drilled and the rivet nut installed and we begin cutting the top side. So I'm going to go ahead and drill this out and install the rivet nut in the same fashion I did for these 2, and then we'll be back. All right, last rivet nut is installed. Now we're going to take our bracket, and what we want to do is just essentially verify that all of the holes line up. So we're going to basically just start all 3 bolts and make sure they thread into the hole. So we've got all 3 of these lined up now. So we're going to actually go ahead and shut the trunk. We're going to cut out our template for the top side, and we are going to start cutting out the top. All right, so we've got the bottom all taken care of. Now we need to go ahead and cut out our trunk skin template, which will look something like this. We need to line this up, if this makes any sense to you. So this towards the rear of the car and this towards the front of the car. And we want to line this up with the edge of the trunk on the passenger side or driver's side, and the leading edge of the trunk. As for the rear edge, well, if you've got a GR86 like this, you basically have the ducktail, and then you've got this piece the ducktail bolts to, and then that piece that is then attached to the trunklet itself. So what we want to do here is line up this rear edge with the piece that the ducktail bolts to. And hopefully that makes sense. Line it up with the edges on the side and the front. And put piece of tape down. Make sure the paper is nice and flat so that you can make sure the slot here is actually straight and parallel with itself. I don't know if this is a trick or what, but what I like to do is put a little piece of tape in the middle, just a tiny piece, to keep the slotted portion from like flopping around when you're using the air gun, if you're or the air cutoff tool. If you're using air and you happen to catch that at the exhaust vent of the tool correctly, it'll blow this thing around. So that's kind of annoying. Anyways, just a thing that I like to do. Now, if this is your first side, then obviously we want to just make sure that the edges are all lined up, and that's as much as you can do. If it's the second side that you're cutting and drilling, what I would strongly recommend is that you make sure your measurements are the same as the other side. We have a little bit of wiggle room here, being that there is a beauty plate that goes on top of this, but I would measure from the edges of the slot on the Templet to the edges of the trunk, and basically make sure that this is still in the same ballpark as the other side, just to make sure that everything when you go back together is the same and you don't have any kind of wonkiness in the uprights. So what I'm going to do now is drill 2 1/4-inch holes on either end, basically so that the slot has a radiused end on both sides, and that'll be my guide for using the cutoff wheel to cut the slot out. And basically, in order to do that, we're going to do it the same way we've done since the beginning of the videos. We're going to center punch the hole, drill a small pilot, and then step it out to 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to begin to cut. But because that's all loud and noisy and very time consuming, I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. So I'm going to cut this out, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so we've drilled and cut out the slot for the wing upright. And basically we're going to take this paper off. I actually accidentally spray waxed the trunk, so the tape didn't even stick, so that's cool. Basically what we want to do here now is make sure that all of the edges are cleaned up, and we also want to make sure that the wing upright actually fits. So this is just the fastest way I found, was I just kind of taped up the bottom here. You could measure it if you'd like, that's totally up to you. But I just taped this guy up just so I didn't scratch it ahead of time before it got installed fully. And as you can see, the upright slots into the trunk. Hopefully you can see that. But basically we're looking to make sure that the upright is able to fully sit inside of the slot and that it's the right size. And what we're going to do now is flip the trunk back up. Hopefully it's still in view. And we need to basically cut out these between these 2 holes here. Zoom in a little bit. If you recall these guys from before, basically these are going to be the slots for the little legs on the upright to poke through the top of the trunk. So we're going to cut out in between these 2 holes, and then we'll be back and I'll show you what that looks like. So we've got the holes, or the cuts, touched up, and we're even so thorough that I screwed up with the drill bit and it got sucked through. And so now I can show you that this is what happens if you don't drill carefully. You end up with a little ding, and that we'll have to touch up and tap back down. Here's the bottom side. See, we've got our rivet nuts installed, and we have our 2 slots that are wing mounts are going to come through, and those are touched up as well with some just generic black paint. Next step, we're going to put on the mounting plate, and then we're going to slide the upright through, and we're going to temporarily install this so that we can get the line or measurement that we need to get the RTV on. So we're going to take our bracket, and what I like to do here is start each bolt with one thread. Again, we're using our 12 millimeter button head cap screws, by the way. Again, you just saw that like a quarter turn. And the reason for that is these are all going in at different angles. So if you bottom this guy out first, these two will have trouble going in. There is a good chance that you will strip or gall the threads. So again, start them like a quarter turn, one thread, something like that. And then you can go ahead, and what I like to do is bottom them out, or at least make sure that the button head is inside of this pocket on all of the bolts, and then give them a nice tightening. We don't need to kill these guys. These are going to be about 6 foot-pounds. I'm sorry, they will be 6 foot-pounds, not about 6 foot-pounds. Now we need to get our mount onto the car. So to do that, these are the bottom feet that bolt to these two threaded portions here. We're gonna slide that in through the top. Let's see if I can do this blind. We might have issues. There we go. So once you get to that point where it is past the stud and the nut, that is when you can either begin to start threading in the top or begin threading in the bottom one. I will say this is kind of a optical illusion going on here, because there is a bit of an angle to the wing mount, but the bolts are threading in straight. You'll see when you go to install this, it looks a little weird. Anyways, we are temporarily installing this, so I'm just going to bottom the threads out. Okay, now we're gonna zoom back out. We're gonna shut the trunk, or just close it. And now we need to seal the edge of the upright to the beauty plate. The beauty plate will seal against the trunk with the VHB tape that we have supplied, and that way there will be no water leakage from there. But we also need to seal off between this surface and the beauty plate, which is right here. So to do that, we're going to use some painter's tape, and we're going to tape along this surface here where it meets the beauty plate. Going to just slide this on temporarily, just like that. So this is the edge of the beauty plate here, right? You can see that. And basically we're going to put a piece of tape that kind of outlines this edge on the upright, and that will give us our boundary for the RTV that's going to seal the beauty plate to the upright and not allow any water come through this entire assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then I'll show you guys how it looks. All right, so here's what we've got. The tape is now on the upright, and we've also prepped our beauty plate. Make sure you have the correct side, or if you're doing both at the same time, obviously you can prep both. What I would say, since we're gonna try to do this in one shot, sorry for the noise, make sure you have this oriented in the right way. I know the first time I saw these, they were a little bit confusing at first. So make sure you have them going the right way, just like that. And that way, when we get through this or start doing this RTV process, you can move quickly and accurately without having to potentially redo any of this. We are gonna do this bad boy live, and hopefully I do it correctly so I don't embarrass myself. So we have our tape line here, and basically what we wanna do is prep all around the wing upright in order to ensure that the VHB tape that we're going to put on the bottom of our beauty plate will stick and adhere correctly to the trunk. And so the directions to do that will be over here. We're going to take this off and I will show you guys the way that it looks. So here's what we've got. You can see our tape line here, and this is the edge that our beauty plate, grab that, it's going to sit. So the beauty plate is going to sit like this. You can see that. Boop. All right. Now, we need to seal this surface with some RTV in order for water to not get into the trunk from this area here. So to do that, we're going to use RTV like I said. I am choosing to use ultra black, or whatever, just because it's black and these are also black. So you can use clear silicone if you want. The end goal here is just to make sure you have a seal so that moisture and water do not get into the cabin. So to start, what I'm going to do essentially is just put a bead right along this tape line. I don't want to go above or onto the tape, just right below this tape line. So I'm going to do that, hopefully very cleanly. We'll see. Okay, so here's roughly what you should have. I'm usually a big stickler about clean RTV, but on this piece, we literally just need to seal this trunk. So we've got our clean RTV here. Next step we're gonna do is mount this to the trunk, being careful not to get RTV everywhere. If I'm being honest though, that shouldn't actually happen because this tape line should be above the actual edge of the trunk. Oops. Again, we're gonna follow the tip to start each bolt first. Okay, because the RTV is still wet, these don't actually need final torquing just yet. So we're gonna do like we did before, and we're just going to bottom them out. So you can see our RTV is just above the trunk. All right, so we have prepped the surface of our beauty plate, and now we are going to install the supplied VHB. Make sure you have it lined up correctly first, and then I like to put the side with the white backing against the beauty plate and allow for the red side with the little pull tab right here to be on the trunk side. Okay, sorry for being out of focus or out of view there, but basically you just want to line this up so that it matches the shape of the beauty plate. Make sure you've got it fully seated and adhered to the beauty plate. Again, I prepped this and the trunk surface with a 50-50 mix of isopropyl alcohol and water. So we're good there. Now, normally I would tell you to install this and pull this off as it gets to the, or as it touches the bottom, but because of the nature of the install and the use of RTV, we're going to remove the red backing right now. Just like that. And again, make sure you have this in the correct orientation. you know, which side is front and which side is back, because once we put this on, we want this to be the final install of the beauty plate, basically. It's not technically final, but having to clean the RTV off might be a pain. So let us do this install. Now, we've got it pushed down, making contact on the trunk evenly. Try and give it about 30 seconds of pressure. Just like that. Now, the reason for the tape on both the upright and the beauty plate is that if any RTV kind of escapes upwards, you'll be able to just run your finger along the edge and basically pull out or scrape off the excess. And then once you peel the tape off like this, you will have a clean line of RTV. Now, in my case, I don't have any RTV squeezing up through the top, so I am okay there. Now, peel off the beauty plate. That completes the install for this upright. You're going to want to repeat the process on the other side, and at that point, once, you know, for me personally, I like to make sure everything is installed the same. Once everything is installed on both sides for the upright and the beauty plate and the mount, you will want to torque all of the M6 bolts to 6 foot-pounds. And then we're going to now move on to installing the actual wing blade. All right, so I like to start with mounting the end plates onto the wing on both sides. The slotted portion will be pointing towards the front of the car, like so. And so what we want to do is grab our end plate washers as well as the O-ring. You can see the O-ring that's in the little groove there. And basically go ahead and put the M4 flathead cap screw through the middle and get ready to install these. So I'm going to put this guy through the hole of the end plate. Take my 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench and basically just snug it. I'm going to take the second one and do the same thing. Now I have these bottomed out. Oops, they do move. We're basically going to save the final adjustment of these to when we actually have the wing set at the desired angle of attack. So we're going to mount the wing onto the uprights now. And in order to mount the wing to the uprights, we're going to grab a 12 millimeter washer, M6 washer, 25 millimeter button head cap screw, these guys here, and we're going to slide them through both the wing mount and the upright from the outside in, so that the button head portion of the bolt is facing the outside, because you want everyone to see the clean hardware, not the tail of the bolt and the nut, you know. Then we're going to use another 12 millimeter washer. This is going to be impossible for you guys to see. And you're going to use your M6 nylock nut that is provided in the hardware kit. And you're going to thread that on the other side. We're going to do that for both front bolts. All right, so we have our 25 millimeter button head cap screws installed loosely in the forward bolts on both uprights. That's going to allow us to adjust the wing to whatever angle of attack that is required for us. With our setup here, with the Verus Engineering parts full aero kit on the car, we're going to recommend starting at around 4 to 6 degrees angle of attack. So to do that, I've set up my angle gauge with a straight edge across the two edges of the wing. Of course, you can also refer to the install manual for a breakdown of each individual hole and the graduations that they will give you in terms of angle of attack. So I've got it set to, well, this says 5.45. I'm going to get it to 6 by installing this last bolt in the rear. A little bit of install magic for you. I did the other one off camera. We're going to go ahead and tighten these with a 4mm Allen and a 10mm hex. We're going to tighten these guys up. Probably should have picked something faster, like a ratchet. But this will also get the job done. Okay, so we're going to torque the wing mount bolts to 6 foot-pounds, which is all you need. Next, we want to make sure our wing end plate is, we recommend level to the ground. You can certainly choose to make this thing at any angle you can dream of within your imagination. That's up to you. So I'm going to take my angle gauge and I'm going to get in the way of the camera. All right, guys, so once you have all of your button head cap screws for the wing mounts and uprights fully torqued to 6 foot-pounds, and you've got your wing end plates tightened up or snugged up just a quarter turn past bottom, we're good to go. You can enjoy the added benefits of more rear downforce on your new GR86. Well, at the time of this recording, it would be pretty new. But again, as always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, be sure to email us at sales@verus-engineering.com. I always forget that. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.